Well, good morning. I'm Jeff Coleman.
And I'm Deborah Pinkerton. Welcome to Morning Light.
Well, 80 years ago, scientists worked tirelessly to discover and test the world's most destructive weapon, the nuclear bomb. What did that first test reveal about the future of war? We are living in that future. Our all-veteran Morning Light panel will weigh in this morning.
But first, here's a preview of what's coming up later in the show. How should you exercise after a traumatic health event? It can be challenging and even scary to start exercising. We will hear from a central Pennsylvania woman who had to take the next steps after a widowmaker heart attack. Also, a Pennsylvania doctor will give us some advice on exercise.
It's such a moving story. I'm excited to hear her perspective. Well, today marks the 80th anniversary of the Trinity test, July 16th, 1945. 20 years after the first successful detonation of an atomic bomb. Here's how its principal creator, J. Robert Oppenheimer, described the aftermath 20 years later.
We knew the world would not be the same. Few people laughed. Few people cried. Most people were silent. I remembered the line from the Hindu scripture, the Bhagavad Gita. Vishnu is trying to persuade the prince that he should do his duty, and to impress him takes on his multi-armed form and says, "Now I am become death, the destroyer of worlds." I suppose we all thought that one way or another.
That's pretty heavy.
Yes, yeah.
Well, this comes as President Donald Trump weighs sanctions against Russia and additional arms sales to Ukraine allied countries. The destruction and human costs of modern warfare is staggering. One estimate suggests the death toll in the Ukraine-Russia war has reached well over 1 million, and that includes military and civilian casualties.
So as the world's military powers continue to boost investment into new offensive and defensive weapon systems, including more sophisticated and destructive missiles, unmanned drones, and a host of remote piloted systems, the technology might be outpacing the conversation about the rules and ethics of war. While the atomic bomb set off a generation of debate in religious and academic and political circles, modern warfare is largely escaping that kind of scrutiny. Our all-veteran Morning Light panel will discuss the idea of a just war and how our Christian faith should inform the response to any conflict. And we're honored to have you gentlemen here this morning. And first, thank you for your service. Each of you representing a different branch in a different period of service, but all of you have had to wrestle as believers with war. We're in a moment where war feels distant, it feels remote, and for many people it feels like a video game. The only debate we're having is about how much money often to spend, not about the larger questions about what should war look like. Dave, you've thought a lot about this as a pastor and as a veteran. Where do you begin this conversation?
Yeah, I was a believer when I went into the military, and I believed that there were certain things as a person I needed to do. I was raised in a family that was pacifist. My grandfather was an old order Dunkard brother, and so when he went into World War I, he said, "I can't carry arms. He can't carry arms," but they put him in charge of all the donkeys. You know, I came out of that background, and so when I went in, it was my thought that I needed to fight for my country because there are evils in the world that I needed to make sure I was a part of the solution, not a part of the problem. And my faith informed that. And that said to me, do what needs done, but not more. And so if that makes sense, do what needs done, but not more. And so it was that idea of there are evils in the world, and we have been given a responsibility, I think, as believers, to fight against evil.
Doc, why is it so difficult for us to call evil evil? You no longer really have national leaders making a case for war on the basis of good or evil. We hear national leadership talking about breaking agreements, going too far, but you don't hear one leader calling another leader evil. It's been a while.
It's been a while. Well, one of the things with leaders are nowadays is leaders and politicians usually aren't the ones that are fighting the war. They're not in the trenches of war. They send people to war. So they're not as concerned if we engage others. They have no skin in the game. They just make policies about it. The people who are actually fighting are the ones, they're the losers, the ultimate losers, because even if you come out of it, you still carry things with you the rest of your life. I don't care who you are. If you've seen conflict, you carry it throughout the rest of your life. And you know, what is evil? What really is evil? I mean, we see things in our own country that I consider evil, I consider wrong. And we're not waging war against them right now, and we should. So there's a lot of things that have happened that really are not good as far as war. There's no winner in a war.
Yeah. Davis, I want to add technology into this because in a lot of movies now, Hollywood has begun to shape the narrative. Even the Superman movie, you know, really it's waging war through digital technology, waging war from a keyboard and a joystick, and the image that we're getting, and especially young people playing video games, really are experiencing is very different from World War I, Civil War, you know, hand-to-hand combat. What do we lose when we lose that narrative or that connection between war as hand-to-hand combat?
Well, it's just very, very different, right? And we can only think of it in terms that we can see through our modern lens, but it really is the reality of a drone pilot sitting in a cubicle. It could be in Pennsylvania, the National Guard. I used to be an attorney for a wing here that has that mission. So there's people sitting in Pennsylvania flying 24-hour operations, potentially dropping bombs and taking lives in the Middle East from outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania.
And that's not without trauma.
It's not without trauma, but it's on a screen. That's very different than being in a situation where you're actually smelling death, where you're seeing that. That's very, very different. Those are two different things. But what we have to remember as veterans now, as the American people, is we don't see and feel the suffering here that much of the world experiences in this, and so we're divorced from that. So we have to be very, very careful. You know, there's this idea, this concept that if we don't understand how terrible war is, then we're likely to engage in it, and that's something that we miss in the modern world, and we've really missed a lot of that. Outside of the Civil War, we haven't seen the impact of war. We've seen the aftermath on people that we deal with, but we haven't seen the suffering like other nations have. And that's a challenge that we face as a nation, because it can make us too eager to look to war as a solution.
So where do we start? Where do you start to find, without a draft or compulsory service, how do you develop a culture in a country that understands that level of sacrifice?
Well, it's really a hard thing to do, but I think we start with following the Constitution and actually not engage in conflict unless Congress votes for it. And it's actually clear, because most people don't realize we haven't officially declared war since World War II, and we've played games with even accountability. So there's a constitutional model we should probably follow that would help.
Where do we find, Dave, the moral language? I mean, from the Revolutionary War forward, the presidents who were engaging in war were drawing on scripture, they were drawing on precedent, they were looking back, and there always seemed to be a group of veterans who were putting this in perspective. Where do we go to find that today, especially when pulpits aren't preaching a lot on war, either way?
I think I can say this for my two brothers on either side of me. Every veteran would tell you the last thing we want to do is go to war. It's horrible. It's the worst thing you ever want to do. It's everything you trained for, but it's the thing you don't want to do. And so for me, I think we need veteran voices at those levels. I quite honestly think that no president should ever serve without being a person who has served us in the military. That's just my personal thought. I want to see a president who has put time in the military. I just think there's value to that.
Put a premium on that.
Yeah, right. We did that for many, many years, you know, all the way back to the very first president, who was the only president who led troops into battle. And so, you know, I think there's something about having been in that situation that does inform you and that does sculpt your morals. I think having been in those places, your morals get defined. Like, here's how far I'm willing to go, and that's too far, and I've seen too far, and I don't want to ever go there. And I think veterans can help that language and help that conversation happen.
A lot of moms and dads listening to this conversation who are saying, Doc, I would never want, or I'm not going to allow, the culture of service has changed significantly where people aren't dreaming of their kid getting into West Point or Annapolis. Sure. How do you, as a believer, make the case that part of loving your neighbor is, in times like this, to be ready to take up arms?
Sure. I mean, I understand that it's a tough thing as a parent to send your child to the military, not even war, the military. Yeah. I know my mom grabbed a hold of me and didn't want to let me go. Mm-hmm. But I felt all my life I needed to serve this country. I wanted to do it. I was proud to do it. Still proud of my service. And I think a lot of people need to look at this, that if you truly love this country, you need to defend it. You need to be willing to defend it, because you can't count on our government to defend it. And I say that meaning that we don't always make the best decisions. All you have to do is look back at Vietnam, and you know that it wasn't a great decision to be there. It cost men lives. It cost women lives. We need to have strong people that are willing to defend this country, because it's worth fighting for. Trust me, it's worth fighting for.
I want you to take us home here and help us frame up, as believers looking at wearing uniforms, what is the price that a Christian pays? What is the role of a dual citizen, someone who's a citizen of heaven, right, a citizen of this country in those times? Why should Christians be in the ranks, and what difference should it make?
Well, there's a lot I could say about that. One is, there is such thing as just war. There are times when God calls on his people to take up arms and to fight evil, and even take a life in fighting to protect the innocent. And that's ultimately the role of the government, right? Protect the innocent and punish the evildoer. So if you can serve in the military consistent with your faith and do that, we need people that are willing and ready to do that. And there is a place for it. We've lost a lot of that in our military. We need that again. But we need people that are willing to stand. If God calls me to do it, I don't want to do it. But if God calls me, I will do what's necessary. And just war is a concept. That's part of our faith as Christians. We understand that.
This is a topic that I think we have to talk more about, a little less on the political side, a lot more on what are the examples in Scripture, and where are the moments when we should be called to take action. So once again, thank you for your service. Thank you for being a part of this conversation today. It's an important one. Well, coming up on Morning Light, a traumatic health event is scary enough, but what do you do afterwards? When should you start exercising, and is it safe? We'll talk with a Central Pennsylvania woman who had a widowmaker heart attack and is now laced up her sneakers to stay fit. You're watching Morning Light right here on Lighthouse TV.
Welcome back. Statistics show about 1/2 of all U.S. adults will experience at least one traumatic event in their lives. Getting back on an exercise routine can help in the healing process. Fastrich Aranos knows the importance of exercise. I spoke with her earlier. Carol, we're here at Seabrook Park, and this park holds a lot of memories. Share that with us.
Yes. In June of 2022, I went out for my morning walk, and as I was walking up the hill in the park, which I do every day with my dog, I started to have a heart attack and ended up calling 911 and basically collapsed in front of the tennis courts. And the ambulance came, and basically they saved my life. I went into cardiac arrest when I went to the hospital, and I died. And so the last few years has just been a really big journey to get back to my level of exercise, which, before my heart attack, I was doing yoga and going to the gym and walking 2 to 3 miles a day. And so I was kind of progressing forward with that regimen. And last year I had a spontaneous bleed into my right knee in September, and it really set me back. I was in the hospital for 7 days, and when I left, I was basically unable to walk. I had a walker and had to start all over again. And after my heart attack, I started walking to the mailbox. That was my first goal. And then I expanded to walking to my neighbor's mailbox. And after my knee, I started to basically do the same thing. I was determined to get back to walking my dog. And so I progressed to a cane and started walking a little farther and a little farther and a little farther. And then when I was able to get rid of the cane, I picked up the dog leash and off Zeke and I went and back up to my 2 to 3 miles a day and just working really hard to get back into the gym.
I mean, this must have been a real shock to your system. I mean, because two pretty traumatic events taking place in your life and having this setback. How did your faith really help you through this as far as getting back into exercise?
You know, exercise has always been really important to me. Both my parents have chronic illness, and so it was just something that I was always determined to do, and it was my stress reliever, and it just made me feel really amazing, and so it was really, really important. And I'd be lying if I said that it didn't challenge my faith, just trying to understand if I could overcome one, but then immediately came right into another. Actually, even worse, it's 10 months and I'm still really struggling to get back to the level of activity. I still have pain every single day. And so it has been a season of trying to figure out why and asking God, what am I supposed to be getting out of this? Or what am I supposed to be learning? Or how am I supposed to be using this for somebody else? God works all things together for our good, and just trying to figure out what that looks like has been really, really challenging.
And so for you, it's just little steps every day. And those are like huge victories.
Yes, especially after my knee, I literally could barely walk up one step to get into my house. It was really devastating. I was devastated, especially because I had made such great strides after my heart attack. So yeah, you always wonder why, but then you turn around and just trust the Lord and just say, okay, where am I supposed to go with this?
And I'm sure you are setting an example for others by sharing your journey.
Yeah, I really just hope to inspire people not only to take control of their health and to be determined to exercise so that they can live a strong, healthy life, but, also that, that they lean into God instead of pulling away from God when they're challenged, especially in areas that are really important to them, the way exercise is important to me.
Yeah, that is certainly a wonderful message. Carol, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
Yeah, thank you.
Coming up next on Morning Light, our Morning Light medical contributor is here to talk about exercising after a traumatic health event. Stay with us. We're back in 1 minute. Welcome back. There can be so many mixed messages about exercise after a traumatic health event. Joining me is Dr. Richard Rayner with Aspire Health Concepts. Thanks for being with us.
My pleasure.
So let's talk about exercise after a traumatic health event. It is important to get back on some type of routine.
It truly is, but let's talk about what a traumatic health event is. It's traumatic and it is an event. And we do have to recognize that from that point on, a person's life is different. They are now a person who has had the heart attack or the cancer or whatever it is. And so to recognize that can mean some significant changes. Now, having said that, it just means that the exercise has to be adjusted to keeping that in mind. But whatever the problem is in medicine, exercise is usually always part of the answer.
And some may be hesitant, say, if they did have a heart attack, saying, well, I really don't want to do something strenuous. So what is your recommendation?
Yeah, so first of course, you would want to talk to the specialist or the doctor who cared for you during that event. Cardiac events, they should be able to tell you, okay, this is how the severity of it, and this is how you should proceed. There's even things called cardiac rehab. So if people are really nervous about that, I would tell them to ask their doctor to sign them up for the cardiac rehab, where they do very close monitoring, and they watch your blood pressure, your weight, your respirations, all the while that you're doing a very graduated program. And the graduated part of that is the thing that's most important.
And really, no matter what your age, you should be exercising.
Oh,
it's
of
just,
course.
you know, taking baby steps, but doing something each day, sort of progressing.
Yeah, and the really amazing thing along that lines is that I have seen people in their 70s and even 80s who were not used to exercising start to do some exercise and actually improve. And I heard them even say, like, I didn't think I was able to do this kind of thing. Now, of course, they're not doing what a 30-year-old would do in that situation. But the point is that our bodies are such that we can pretty much all the time improve to some degree. The expectations have to be lower the older that we get, but they're definitely, and it can be an improvement, and it has a ripple effect.
That's what I was going to say. It has that ripple effect where it helps you in your health as far as how you live your daily life.
Absolutely. So certain things happen biochemically in our bodies with exercise that we don't actually measure. I mean, people get on the scale, they say that, or they see, you know, how is their waistline doing or whatever. But there's lots of things that are happening on a biochemical, microscopic level that you can't measure, but are doing positive things. And the really interesting thing about exercise is it has a head-to-toe effect. And I mean, even our emotions and how our brain works, clarity with thinking, energy, you know, there's a little bit of a learning curve, right? But then when people get into a groove, they find, wow, I actually feel better all over.
Yeah, certainly it does. And the Bible emphasizes exercising, being healthy.
Yeah, well, our bodies are temples, and we all, love to, say that verse. But that means a lot of different things. But one thing is that kind of taking care of things that we've been given, it just makes sense. And then as we're using our bodies along the ways that God intended, then of course we're going to feel better about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I know that I was taking a break from exercising, just being too busy with life, and my just resting heart rate was higher. And now since I started getting into exercising again, and it's lower, my resting heart rate. So you can see the effect, and it doesn't take a lot of work.
Yeah, right. It just means you committing to it, right? So we all learned the little fable when we were young about slow and steady wins the race, right? And that's true with pretty much anything that we value in life, and in particular with our bodies. So start small and gradually build, but make a commitment to saying, boy, I'm going to do this 3 times a week, and if I can possibly squeeze in a 4th, great. But as you get older, whatever you think you should be able to do, I say to people, just do half of that, because the injuries come more easily, and it's so much harder to get over the injury the older we get.
Yeah, great words of advice and baby steps, but just do something. Thank you, Dr. Rayner, for being with us.
Yeah, it's great being here.
Stay with us. We will be right back. Welcome back. Coming up tomorrow on Morning Light, hear how a disaster relief agency with ties to Pennsylvania is on the ground in Texas, helping with the cleanup efforts. Find out how they are restoring hope to those affected by the devastating floods. And that's a look at what's coming up tomorrow on Morning Light. Now, Jeff, your closing thoughts.
Well, thank you, Deborah. Well, there's a group of researchers studying how Americans are spending the hours of the day, and there's a bright red warning light flashing in the middle of our culture. More and more of us are eating alone. Really. Get this, 25% of 18 to 24-year-olds are dining solo. That's almost double what it was 2 decades ago. 3 meals a day, all by ourselves. Phones sitting in for people, and it's having an impact on our happiness, on our mental health. Look, from the beginning of the story of humanity, our Creator said it wasn't good for us to be alone. We're designed to carry each other's load. We have a built-in capacity to share. It's the whole point of neighborhoods. If you've got an extra seat at your table every once in a while, risk it. Invite someone to eat your food and share a little life with you. Friendship is so worth the risk. For Deborah and the entire Morning Light team, I'm Jeff Coleman. Thanks for watching. Check on your neighbors. We'll see you again tomorrow morning.